I dreamt about Brett Goldstein the other night, and it was actually, that sounds like it would be a fantastic dream, but it wasn't, because it made me really sad.
Why?
It was like, so for some reason I was like a runner, like that's a crew position on film sets and stuff. I was a runner on Ted Lasso season 3 for some reason.
Okay, you don't think I'd know what a runner is.
I'm
But
I'm
carry on.
not necessarily telling you, I'm telling the audience. But a runner is basically everyone's bitch on set, right? You just help out whoever.
Yeah.
And I was a runner. And then for some reason in this make-believe world, Hannah Waddingham was like the main producer on the show, not Jason Sudeikis. It was Hannah Waddingham. And I got along with her
Okay.
well. And she was like, "Hey, do you want to write one of the episodes?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I wrote the episode, and I could tell like it wasn't great. So I was like, "Oh, I love Brett. I think he's a great writer and stuff." So I went up to Brett and I was like, "Brett, I've been tasked with writing this episode. Don't think it's that great. Can you just like proofread it, give me some feedback?" And then I gave it to Brett. He was so lovely about it. He went away, and then he didn't talk to me again until I like approached him and was like, "Hey, so what's going on?" And he was like, "Yeah, I've taken over the episode. Like, it really wasn't good what you've done." And I was just so ashamed of myself that I'd really let Brett Goldstein down, and that's the story. I was just really sad.
I mean, that is a little bit sad, isn't it?
It was.
I don't think he would be like that, though.
No, I don't think so at all. My
Roy
brain
would be
just.
like that.
Who would?
Roy.
Roy, mate. Well, not Phil Dunster though, because he's great. But oh wait,
No,
hold
Roy
on. No,
can.
I had a dumb thing. I thought when you said Roy, you meant Jamie.
Aiden is a fake Ted Lasso fan.
I'm falling apart. We are the Ted Lasso podcasting, Ted Lasso post match. I'm Aiden. I'm joined by my good friend Vinny. Vinny, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Aiden?
I'm just bloody swell. We
Bloody
got
swell.
bloody swell. We got a brand new episode to talk through here today, and at the very end, we're going to crown an MVP, the most valuable player of the episode, which is proving to get harder and harder every week, to be honest.
This week was very easy for me.
Yeah,
And I always struggle with the MVP.
yeah. I don't know. I struggle with this one. There was one that stood out to me the most, but there was like lots of other people who I thought put in a good argument to be the MVP of the episode. But hey,
Yeah.
we'll get to that. This episode,
We'll
Vinny,
get
do you know what
there.
it's called?
No, you go ahead.
I have notes that make me sound smarter than I am. The Strings That Bind Us, and it's written by Jane herself, Coach Beard's missus, Phoebe Walsh.
Yes, I saw
which
that. Yep.
last week was written by Beard, actually, and so this week being written by Jane. There's a conspiracy there if you want it. We'll go through character by character once again. Vinny, I've got them sliced through. You pick, all right? We can do Keely and Jack first, or we can do Sam first, or we can do Nate first. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll save Ted and Richmond to last. So which one of those three?
We'll do Keely first.
Cool. That's exactly how I
Because
had
I
it in
think,
my notes.
Keely, the episode starts very early with Keely, so I think it's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a plot line that does feel quite separate to the rest of what's going on, but
yes, defo.
yeah, we've got her and Jack continuing to, I guess, bond, and she's taken her out on a whole bunch of dates. One of the early scenes was them, I guess, coming out to the office that they were together, and
yeah,
there's a hilarious scene with the window switching from being visible to invisible.
The big first scene is them at breakfast, and she gets given that book. So she gets given the first edition Jane Austen novel.
Do you know?
Which is obviously a big, expensive gift.
Do you know what that book is?
It's Sense and Sensibility, isn't it?
Do you know what that book is about?
No,
because
I'm uncultured.
No, well, sorry, I'm uncultured too, but Twitter told me. So that's we can sort of walk through what this book is about, and in the process, walk through Keely and Jack's stuff in this episode. Okay, hear me out. All right.
Okay.
So someone on Twitter, I think they're called literate Greek, something like that. I don't know.
Some sort of symbolism's coming from here. I can feel it.
So yes, very much. So what they say is, I swear to God, if those men in the Ted Lasso writers' room pull out a Sense and Sensibility themed plot, ooh. So the older, more emotionally reserved leading lady who conceals her emotions but desperately wants love. That is Rebecca. Okay. And then you've got the younger, hopeless romantic who wants to be swept off her feet. Healy. And then the plot: the hopeless romantic enters into an exciting whirlwind romance with a rich, attractive partner who showers her with attention and gifts. Unfortunately, they have a public scandal which they had already done once before, and they choose their reputation over our leading lady. So let me tell you that there is I think next week's episode, in the
I
synopsis,
saw in the synopsis,
it
yeah,
says there's a scandal between the Keeley
involving
thing.
Keeley, yeah.
So, merit there. Eventually, the hopeless romantic realizes that the grumpy old man who's been looking out for her and allows her to be herself while grounding her is the one for her, and they end up happily together. Who's that grumpy old man?
I mean, who's the grumpy old man in Ted Lasso? It's obviously the love of my life, Roy Kent.
Mr. Fuck Off. It's Roy Kent. Um, she ends up with the kind man who. Oh, okay, so this is now about the elderly, more wise
Rebecca.
lady. She ends up with the
Rebecca.
kind man who does not appear to be a great romantic lead, but boasts a quiet intimacy that makes people attached to him, including a previous relationship that is still prominent in his life. Everyone notes how good of a friend they are because no one suspects there could be anything but friendship. They continually miss chances and hold emotions close to their chest, both putting their needs before their own happiness. Sorry, both putting others' needs before their own happinesses. Our leading lady eventually lets her guard down and allows herself to express her emotions to him instead of keeping them to herself. They two end up happily together.
That to me says Ted and Rebecca.
Yeah. So
But we'll see.
The elder, the more wise lady is obviously Rebecca, and the younger hopeless romantic is Keeley. And it just, for me, that pretty much confirms that Ted and Rebecca are going to end up together. Especially, like, they say that she eventually lets her guard down and allows herself to express her emotions. Is it the second last, or it might be the finale of every season? There's a room. There's a scene between Rebecca and Ted in Ted's office, and they sort of set it up at the end of the season 2 on. Ted's like, hey, we're making a habit of this every year. Let's see what it could be next season.
Yeah.
Thoughts? I just said a lot of things, so you hit me with your thoughts.
I mean, I like the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily of Ted and Rebecca, but I like the whole idea of them hinting towards the Sense and Sensibility route with the book. Like we've spoken about this before, but the writing in Ted Lasso is so intricate and so, like, well thought out and brilliant. So it wouldn't surprise me if they've done that.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued to see where it goes. Obviously, we've said in this season there are a lot of hints towards Ted and Rebecca. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to go about it. But I'm interested to see. Very interested to see. I'm very interested to see how Keeley's storyline develops as well. Because obviously I think, they spent even part of this season really pushing Keeley and Roy to then have them separated for most of the season. I feel like there should be, or there will be, some sort of reconciliation.
Yeah.
And I think that this episode did a very good job in showing, sort of highlighting some issues there is with Jack.
Yeah.
Which I noted, because obviously, like, I can't remember her name, but the woman that works in Keeley's office said, or like highlighted sort of a level of inappropriateness, if that's a word.
The Katie Wicks character.
Yeah. She highlighted like how it is a bit inappropriate because Jack is actually Keeley's boss. And she's buying her expensive gifts. And then obviously later on, Rebecca says, oh, she's buying her expensive gifts. That's what Rupert did. That's love bombing. And even
Red
I've been
flags.
in like, yeah, I've been in a situation where like, you know, you see someone and then they always shower you with gifts. And it is sort of, it does blind you a bit, which is also what Keeley says. Like, maybe we're a bit love blind. And I think the gifts are also doing that to Keeley. And I just think this is a bit of a red flag. But I like the fact that other characters are picking up on it.
Yeah.
And Keeley does get a little bit defensive. So yeah, with the synopsis next week, I'm very intrigued to see what happens with this storyline going forward. Because I was wondering when they initially established this Keeley and Jack storyline where they were going to take it. And now I'm very, very intrigued to see where it's going to go after this week.
Well, I've got a feeling sort of a big thing of Keeley's arc, starting from her with Jamie, has been her struggling to sort of stand up for herself. You know, she started to make moves in that very early on in season 1, but she's come a long way in that to the point where she's got her own business. And that was obviously a big part at the start of this season with her having to fire Shandy. And I think the ultimate thing for her now is going to have to be her making that decision for herself and basically having to quote unquote fire a relationship. I don't know why I say quote unquote, that doesn't make sense in that sentence, but fire a relationship. But also in doing that, she could then potentially fire the biggest business backer in her, like the person that's backed her company. So that's going to have larger ramifications, and she's going to cry and she's going to fall apart. And then all of a sudden Roy's going to walk in and be like, all right, Keeley, it's okay. Give her a hug. And then
very good Roy impression.
And then the bang, and they're all good.
Yeah, I think that what Roy is good at, because obviously I think he does it in series 2 with Rebecca, is he says it how it is. You know, he says when Rebecca's dating that guy, he's like, he's all right, but he's like, why would you settle for that? You deserve this.
Yeah,
and he's very blunt and to the point. Yeah. And I think that maybe Roy will have that sort of scene with Keeley where, you know, if Keeley does potentially lose Jack as a business backer and that whole relationship goes sour, Roy will be there and be like, look, you don't need this. Like, you're fucking amazing at what you do. You'll find, like, and he'll sort of do that good Roy Kent motivational talk that he's good at.
Which one? He's got 2 different. It can be soft one, or he can be like, all right, whistle. I love that he yells whistle.
Yeah, I love that.
You get like kind of used to it. And so in this episode, when someone questions why he says whistle, it's like, yeah, I totally forgot that that's what he does. Like, we're just so used to it. It's so good.
The Keeley and Jack storyline is definitely going to be more prominent next week. And I'm very intrigued to see where it goes.
Yeah, I hope we start to make a bit of movement in that, because it's ticking a lot of the boxes at the moment. It's hitting a lot of the beats that it kind of has to do. But yeah, I think it's in need of a little bit of spice to make it a little bit more relevant to the stuff that's going on at Richmond, I think. All right, shall we talk about Sam? Because this is sort of our first time we've had a bit of a Sam plot line this season, right?
Yeah, this season. Yeah, defo.
Yeah, which I think is a bit of a shame, because he's a great actor and a great character. So his main plot this season, this episode, is he's basically standing up for his beliefs. There is a politician that is basically saying like no to refugees.
No refugees.
Yeah, shutting that stuff
down. Which is, which does happen in the UK a lot. Yep. There's a lot of politicians that are like, no. And I will say that there is a politician, don't know, I think she resigned. I hope she resigned, called Priti Patel. And she was very much like that. So I think that's who that character is based off.
Right, okay.
That's what I think anyway. Because she was very much like, no, we're not helping anyone. You need to help yourselves. That was very much her vibe.
Okay. Well, this, I'll just call her Theresa May, because that's the only British Parliament person that I know. I don't know what her views are. I don't know if they're relevant to this character at all. But hey, Theresa May's going off on a tangent, and Sam's like, he wants to stand up to her, and I think the whole episode he's kind of trying to balance this whole thing of he feels like a fire in his belly to make conflict with this woman, but he knows with his personal, he's got restraint on himself because of his personal values.
I think that Sam sees that this is an issue, sees that this politician is an issue, her views are an issue, like they should be helping these people. So he tries to use his position as a footballer for good, and then he gets stick for it. And obviously at the same time, like, he's preparing for his dad to come over. So there's a lot of sort of almost conflict within Sam there, because he wants to do well. He wants to do it in a nice way. When the restaurant chef is like, oh, just call her a bitch, and he's like, no, I'm gonna do it my way.
Yeah.
And yet he still doesn't, like, he still gets shit for it. I saw like a lot of, because obviously, as you just mentioned, like, a lot of characters in Ted Lasso tend to be based on real life characters now, real life people now and then.
Like Theresa
especially
May.
A lot of the footballers. Yeah, not Theresa May, but yeah. And especially a lot of the footballers. And I will say that in this episode, I saw a lot of similarities between Sam and Marcus Rashford.
Oh yeah, the Manchester United fella.
Manchester United player and England player. And again, I don't, because obviously you're in Australia, I don't know if you know this, but back in COVID times,
those were the days. Am I right? Yeah, go on.
The government in the UK obviously locked everything down, and they were really shit at it, to be honest. But they got rid of free school meals because obviously, like, they were trying to save money and everything like that. And Marcus Rashford went head on with Westminster and was like, no, because Marcus Rashford grew up in Wythenshawe, which is not particularly well-off area in Manchester. And he went head on with Westminster and was like, these kids need these free school meals. Like, loads of people can't afford to feed their kids. You still need to provide their school. And Westminster were like, no. And Marcus Rashford won in the end. But he got a lot of stick for it as well from a lot of other people, being like, oh, why is he getting involved in politics? He's a footballer. Just stick to kicking the ball around and stuff like that. And when Sam has his big outburst at the end, when he's like, oh, he gets hate for trying to do something, but from the people that are supposed to love him, but he also gets hate from those people if he misses a penalty, which is very similar to Rashford, because in the Euro final, England were against Italy and it went to penalties, and Marcus Rashford missed a penalty and he got a lot of hate for it. But obviously when he scores, he gets a lot of love and a lot of people really like him. And I just saw a lot of similarities there. And I know that obviously the writers of Ted Lasso, and like Jason Sudeikis, even, like, when there was 3 young lads on the England team in the Euros that missed penalties, and they got so much hate for it. And not long after that, Jason Sudeikis wore a T-shirt with their names on at like a press conference. Because he was like, he really respected them and he was on their side, and he was like, they shouldn't be getting this hate because they're like Marcus Rashford's like my age, and then there's a kid on the England team as well called Bukayo Saka, who again is very similar to Sam, and he's like 20, 21, and they were getting so much hate. And I really am seeing where they're sort of getting these inspirations for storylines almost.
Yeah, which I really enjoy. That's why you're our UK football correspondent, Vinny. Number one
Well, I
football
thought
fan in the UK.
I thought you'd be interested in that.
It's actually very interesting. I think we've looked at a lot of the characters and seen who their real life counterparts are, and I think you've hit the nail on the head with Sam, because Sam definitely is a Marcus Rashford type, I think. Yeah. So Sam's restaurant gets like torn apart, and
Yeah.
on the wall they write "Shut up and dribble," which I think is what the Theresa May wrote on the tweet to him. And so that's obviously very nasty. And yeah, at the same time, his dad Ola comes into town, and he's sort of the one that kind of gets his head into the right place. You know, like you don't need to fight back. You just need to think forward. And there's this whole through line of sort of looking at what this situation needs. You know, does the situation need someone to fire back? No, like that they say multiple times in this episode, like we just needed to look at what the situation needed, and that's what the characters all say at the end scene, which we'll get to eventually. And yeah, so I thought that was lovely, and it was lovely having Sam's dad there, because he's been such a sort of prominent figure on Sam's phone throughout the show. So actually meeting him was
nice
great
to have him. Yeah,
and he's lovely.
I will say that no, you go.
I was going to say, I love when Ted meets him. He's like, "Oh, I was going to wear that same thing today."
Yeah, typical Ted.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that obviously there's like a few different storylines woven through this episode, but the Sam storyline really hit me. I was really like, I cried. I cried at some of Sam's scenes. Yeah,
that's sweet. Yeah,
it was just, I was just really like, really touched me.
Yeah, the ending where
I really enjoyed it.
The ending where they're just sort of like partying together as they're cooking in the kitchen and stuff was just so like wholesome. Like that's what like parent kid relationship sort of should be when you reach that adulthood, where you can just like have a good time together and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see in a show, as we've established before, that's really about fathers. It's nice to see a really good father and son relationship.
Yeah, another, very different again to all the other relationships we have seen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When obviously, like when the restaurant gets ruined, the Richmond team come in and help clear up, and that was when I started getting emotional. I was like, oh,
that was wholesome. There's a few times, as much as I could say, like I enjoyed the through line that they were saying about, what the situation really needs. Like that, we had to look at what the situation needed, and we thought it was us. And I have felt this. Ted Lasso's always been really good at sort of hiding its messages. Like at time to time, they'll bring it up a little bit more, but they're usually quite subtle in how they sort of give off these inspirational things. But I've definitely felt like this season, a lot of the messages that they've done, like there was a big one from Ted at the very end of last episode where he's like, we need to learn to be flexible, but watch each other's backs and be there for each other. And there's just been a few times this season where I felt like the writing's been a little bit too direct for me. Like I said, many times this episode, they said, we just had to look at what the situation needed. And it just gets a little bit like eye rolly for me when they're just like spelling out the message, because they do such lovely jobs with the messages. And I think you've got to kind of trust the audience to get that without just saying specifically what they're trying to say. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I'm intrigued to see where it's going. I do think the writing has been not bad this season. Obviously, I would never say that because I love this show.
Never.
But, like, it's taken a while to get where it's going.
Yeah, I think that comes down to they have so many characters that are developed now, and so they have to spend so much time with them each week. And I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the hour-long runtime. I kind of like where season 1 kind of sat, that 30 to 40-minute runtime every episode. That for me, I don't look at Ted Lasso like it's a big hour-long drama. I kind of just like these fun little snippets that are 30 to 40 minutes long, with maybe the finale being a bit longer. But I'd rather them do this than rush it.
Yeah, and I think that certain episodes work being longer. Like this week's, I really enjoyed. I thought the pacing was really good. The same with last week's. Like, if anything, last week's wasn't long enough. I wanted more.
You wanted more of that. That's the Ted Lasso
Um,
movie last week.
yeah, but
Yeah.
some episodes in this season I've been like, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I enjoyed this episode. It sort of suffered for me a little bit in terms of some of the things I've been a bit Trent Crib, by that I mean critical, about in previous weeks. It is
Yeah.
like it's an episode that just has like a lot of different scenes and a lot of different character things that don't quite gel together. I was reading a review of this episode today, and it was sort of saying it feels like a clown car with one too many clowns in the car. Like there's just a lot going
Yeah.
on, and it just feels like every week they're kind of dealing with one character too many. And but the alternative thing is then you have characters that feel underdeveloped by the time you get to the end of the season. So it's a hard
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
I think they're doing it the best they can, but I do think they've written themselves into a position where they have a lot of characters that need working on, and so yeah, it's a tough one. But yeah, they're doing the best they can. We've got a lot more Nate action this episode after
Yeah.
him only having one shot in last week's episode. He's trying to have it. He's trying to get on with Jade. You know, he wants to ask Jade out on a date. He goes to his favorite restaurant, of course, and he sees her in there, and he's like, "I'm gonna ask her out." And he goes in, kind of freaks out, goes to the bathroom, and he considers
Yeah.
doing the spit thing, but he doesn't, which shows he's not trying to be that guy. He's not anymore. He knows he needs to be Mr. Nice Nate, and that's how she likes him. And in the end, he's like, "I'll be back," and he runs off. And one of my favorite things about all of these restaurant scenes are that he can never walk out that door. Like every single time he walks into the door, like it's a push rather than a pull or
Yeah.
something like that. And it's so funny that it happens every single time. It's just so Nate. What did you think of this plot line?
Um, it was all right.
Hmm?
It didn't give me anything, Like I feel obviously this is probably a plot line in this episode that I feel didn't have to be in it, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously it has to be in it to move Nate's character forward.
Yeah.
So like some of the plot lines in this episode, like the Richmond stuff and the Keeley stuff, is all sort of, I think, quite relevant, like quite like an interesting plot point. The Sam stuff, interesting plot points going forward. But like the Nate stuff, I was a bit like, I know
Yeah.
that it's to move his character forward, progress his character. But yeah, it was
I
just there
almost
for
feel
me.
like there's a lot of, because I enjoy the Nate stuff and I do enjoy watching his scenes, but once again, it's similar to the Keeley thing where it's like it feels so separate to the main plot. Part of me,
Yes.
I think they're doing the best they can with the Keeley Jack thing at the moment. But I think with Nate, almost what would have been good is like if he'd only been on screen for a couple of episodes so far. And I know they haven't tried and forced him into every episode, but it's like if he was in the premiere and then maybe he was in the game against West Ham. But then I wouldn't be mad if they left him out of like every other episode until like episode 8 or something, and it was like a Nate centered episode. And maybe that
Yeah.
episode could reveal, like maybe it starts with like a montage of him at West Ham, at like the West Ham game against Richmond, and you sort of see that. But like, I mean, if they made the whole first half of the season, they painted him as a villain, and then maybe they do like a Nate centered episode at the end of this, towards the end
Yeah,
of the
and you see a
season,
different side of him.
where you see a few of the moments where he maybe came off a bit dickish, but
Yeah.
you see like an alternate version of that where you see him regret it immediately after, and then in that
Yeah.
episode they can start to reveal that things aren't as they seem at West Ham, and that way I don't know, it will just I just think it will be a bit more concise. I don't know.
Yeah. I think I agree with you with that, Nate's story and Keeley and Jack's story feel very separate from everything else that's going on. But I think what worked for me in this episode and didn't work for me in this episode is that, and it's so minor, but it's the fact that Keeley has a catch up with Rebecca. And I think that really ties Keeley in.
Definitely.
Whereas because Nate is separate, Nate is at West Ham, Nate is not interacting with any other characters. It does, to me, I was like, I don't need this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I didn't enjoy watching it. Yeah, it does feel like it feels completely like not important compared to the rest of the story that's going on, which is all interlinked.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Like, I think we will have more of a Nate-centered episode coming up. And we'll see a bit more of Nate at West Ham, because we've not really seen him at West Ham too much. They've been focusing, like recently, they've been focusing more on him with Jade.
Mm-hmm.
And in this episode was all sort of his private life and his family life. So,
which was nice to see. It was nice to see his family life and that kind of,
yeah,
I guess, the weird relationship with his dad, but then
but I
also
do
him
think
having
that,
a good relationship with his mum and sister.
yeah, and seeing that he can be nice. But I
Yeah,
do think that we will see Rupert soon, and we'll see Nate with Rupert, and we'll have that weird dynamic again. And yeah, like it felt very by itself, out of place, the Nate storyline.
Yeah,
In this
definitely.
episode for me.
We got to move on pretty quick, but I have a very quick question for you. Do you reckon it was a little bit of a mistake in the end of season 2 writing, and I think this was I think this would have been a natural progression eventually to take it with, but do you think it was a bit of a mistake to have Keeley leave working directly for Richmond and instead having her own business? Because I think that's what separated her, and I think they didn't necessarily have to do that. Like, I know meeting Jack and stuff, that all came through her starting her own business, but I think there's other ways to have done that same plot point without taking her away from the main group.
I mean, potentially, but I think that Keeley's story, she starts off as just a model.
Yeah.
Or whatever like that, like a model and influencer. And she's so, like, I think it's Rebecca's influence on her a lot. Like, she gets responsibility of Richmond. She goes up, and then, like, she starts her own company. Like, I think that's natural progression for Keeley's character. So I don't know. I think she'll become more prominent with Richmond by the end of the season again.
Yeah, it's like, for me, you're so right. The natural progression of her is to start her own business and sort of go in Rebecca's footsteps. But I almost feel like maybe, I don't think we've got a lot out of her having her own business this season, other than just having her be separate from the main group.
It's been very focused on her relationship with Jack.
Yeah.
And I think that when that falls apart, which I am anticipating it will,
definitely,
then we'll actually see like a very good development of Keeley's character in business terms. And I think we'll see her potentially more involved with Richmond again, definitely. More around Rebecca, more sort of, I'm not sure, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, part of me just sort of felt like maybe it would just be that great move at the end of season 3 to have her start her own business, and like, just that way she would have been a bit more connected to Richmond. High. But then again, the whole idea of her becoming a bit of a boss bitch, I don't think they could have done that with her at Richmond, because she's not in charge of a lot of people there.
Yeah, she's got a lot to learn, and she's got a lot to develop with. Like, obviously, like, Rebecca is, a strong boss in charge, and that is what Keeley wants. And I think it's good for the fans to, if we saw Keeley at the end of series 3 go off and make her own business, and then that's sort of how the show ended, I don't think it would be particularly fair on the fans, because you're not seeing Keeley become that character that she wants to be. So I think we will see that by the end of the season.
I think you're probably right there. Yeah, it was probably a good decision to move her into having her own business. I think that just comes with a little bit of baggage, kind of comes with that move, but that's fine. I'm going to keep saying this, that's the Trent Krim critic inside of me coming out. All right. Just some highlights from the Nate portion of the episode. I like that when he says, "Hey Siri," it replies saying, "Hi Wonderkin."
Yeah.
And then he goes like, how do you know if a girl's like you? And Siri's simple response is, "You can't," which is like a constant through line in the episode, which I thought was really funny. And him getting with, asking Jade out on a date, I thought was lovely. I really enjoyed this Nate stuff. It just felt so irrelevant to the rest of the plot. And then the actual date I thought was really lovely, and I thought Jade scrubbed up really well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was bad. I just, it was really irrelevant. I think that the you can't stuff, because obviously that crops up a lot throughout this episode when he's like, how do I know you won't?
Yeah.
How can I tell you can't? I think that is very much what you were saying earlier about writing points being a bit too obvious. I think that's a very subtle message of them, the Ted Lasso writers, again, putting in the, you just have to believe.
Yeah.
Like you
Insert
won't know
theme
for
song
certain.
Here.
You won't know for certain. You just have to go in with a bit of blind faith and hope.
Yep.
And just see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they were reiterating there.
It was very sweet seeing him make the was it like a diorama or something in his toy box that he made in the end? That was,
yeah, it was a little like
pop
up. Yeah.
And it got run over, and I liked how she was like, was there anything in that? And he was like, well, no. She's like, was there an animal in that? And he's like, no, there wasn't. And she's like, are you sure? But yeah, I did enjoy that a lot. I just wish it was a little bit more connected. Okay, let's talk to the main juiciness with Ted and Richmond. Ooh, it's cool. I feel like we got to see a lot of minor characters get a little bit more to do. Like, yeah, Jamie had a bit more to say in this episode. He had a good week last week, but he's been on the back burner for a lot of the season, I think. And
yes, I agree.
We start with them sort of teaching total football to Richmond.
Yep.
I love Beard's propaganda speech.
Yeah. I liked that they started off by Roy's gonna put you into darkness so Beard can shed some light, and I loved that.
And even just the way like Roy just punches the light switch.
Yeah.
Roy, it obviously wasn't a Roy-centric episode, but every single thing that left Brett Goldstein's mouth this week, I laughed at. Like, it was so funny. Yeah,
it was good.
Him being like, making references and being like, I hate what you've done to me.
Yeah.
That was really good. There was one other thing he said that was really funny as well, but I don't know if I noted it here. When he's like, yeah, and we're gonna do this plan, we're gonna do it, we're gonna go now, and they're like, and everyone's like, we're not gonna do that in like this game though, are we? And Ted's like, yes, we are. And then Roy instantly changes and he's like, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
That's very good. Okay, so they sort of run through a few different steps of how to get into total football.
And they run through the history of it.
Yep, they do the history of it. I like how, it's like a propaganda thing. The music's kind of going with it, and Beard's like rising, and he's like, and you will get it. You will do it. And everyone's like cheering on. And then when Ted's like, that's what we're going to do, they're all like, what the fuck? So they end up going into main training and doing it over a few days, I think. They try all sort of different aspects of it. The first lesson being, I think this is the first one they did, they need to trust
characters.
Was it swapping characters that happened first, like swapping players?
I think so. What were you going to say?
I think, what did I have? Yes, they have to trust each other to play other positions, which
so they Isaac and Danny swapped, and then they did a very funny impression of each other.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. That was so funny.
Which I loved.
That was so good.
They were both spot on.
They were perfect. They were so good.
Yeah.
And you kind of don't expect that from Isaac.
No, and it was just brilliant. It was so good.
Isaac had a lot of fun this episode. Like when he was fun for us when he had to kick the penalty, and he's like, "I've never kicked a penalty in my life, Ted." And
the corner,
kicks it, goes into the window, smashes. Fucking Higgins.
Higgins
only seen this episode. I'm 99% sure this is Higgins only seen this episode.
I think it was
sat there with a tee, ball hitting the back of the window, and him being like, tea, hot tea.
I fucking love Higgins.
He's good.
Yeah,
he's
great.
So good.
Brilliant.
And
all the characters swap positions on the field.
Yeah.
Including Van Damme, which I thought made no sense.
I was like, you got to stick Van Damme in the goals. Like, that's a total different thing. But hey, I, including Will and Beard swapped.
Yes, which I really enjoyed.
I when they reveal that, it's like they step aside and you see Beard like with some water bottles and he just like fumbles the
Yep.
ball and he's like, and I loved, even as the scene continued after that, you could just see Beard out of focus in the background trying to deal with these bottles. And it was funny as shit. And
I
then
really
even like
enjoyed
Will's Beard
Will's.
impression. And he's
Yeah,
like, let's go, baby.
I really enjoyed Will's beard impression. I thought that was spot on
Yeah.
with his tape beard.
Yeah. And in the office, he's like feet on the table reading the book. And he's like,
Yeah,
okay, get the
so
fuck
good.
out. He comes in.
Spot on.
The next big thing was sort of learning to be aware of where everyone was at the current moment,
Yep.
right? Which I feel like that's sort of how football should work in general, not just total football.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they I guess play a penis game where they wrap ropes
Yep.
around the ding dongs, and it hurts to go too far away from each other if you're not following each other in your little triangles or whatever.
Yep.
It hurt to watch a little bit.
I found it hilarious.
Yeah, I'm sure you did, woman.
It was highly entertaining for me, especially when towards the end of that sequence where Ted just walks out.
It's so rough. And there's like that moment where it comes off of Jamie's and you just see like the rope on the floor and they're all like, oh no, and they have to wait for Jamie to like have a look at his pants and be like, oh, we're good.
It's okay.
and Baz, Paul, and Jeremy, those are the sort of the punters from May's pub. That
Oh yeah.
they get invited to watch, which I just thought was fun. Like they didn't really need to do it; they didn't need to be there, but I just thought it was fun. Like seeing, I think it's Jeremy who's the really kind guy of the three of them.
Yeah.
And one, when they swap personalities, that was really funny. But the other thing is when Jeremy's funny. Like, he gets the rope and he's like, guys, we've got to do this. We've got to do it ourselves. And everyone in the crowd's like walking away from him.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to note from like the training?
No, obviously Roy shouting whistle when he was like, right, you're just gonna run up and down for the whole fucking training.
Yeah.
And then obviously they were all vomiting. Yeah. But no, that's it. It was just very funny. All of the training scenes were hilarious. I really enjoyed them.
Yeah, it's good. Like I enjoyed Ted Lasso not being a show about football. Like I enjoyed that it is a show about football, but it's not trying hard to be. And you have episodes like last week, and there's so many episodes in every season where it's just not really that football related. But it is,
and
it is nice to see Ted being invested as a football coach, and this episode sort of glorifying that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I say to people when I'm like, oh, you should watch Ted Lasso, and they're like, oh, I've not heard of it. What is it about? And I'm like, it's about football, but it's not about football. And I always feel like I have to like really reiterate that. I'm like, it's about football, but it's not about football.
Yeah, but it's not football.
Like it is, but it isn't.
And like, what are you talking about? And you're like, no, just watch it.
And I'm like,
it's not football.
Yeah, I'm like, just watch it. I'm like, it's about football. It's about a football team, but it's so much more than that.
It's about deep, meaningful messaging.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, it was so nice to see Ted back, sort of in the zone a bit.
Yeah,
it was nice to have the players have. Obviously, they struggled with total football for a bit. And then they obviously going on to play Arsenal at the Emirates. Arsenal. Who actually played last night in the UK? Fun fact.
Not against Richmond though.
They played against Manchester City.
Okay. Once again, not Richmond.
No. I mean, Richmond don't exist, but
yeah. Don't ruin that for me.
So, yeah, they play against Arsenal, and obviously, total football just isn't working out at half time. They're 3-0 down.
Ooh.
In 45 minutes.
Not good.
And they're like, this isn't good. And I think it's Beard and Roy that are like, let's just go back to the old plan.
Yep.
And then Ted's like, nah,
fam.
we're not giving up. And then the voice of reason comes from Mr. Jamie Tart.
Jamie Tart, do 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 do. Jamie Tart, do 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 do. Jamie Tart, do 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 do. Jamie Tart. I love how out of sync that's gonna sound because we did it through Zoom. Jamie has some feedback about the plan, putting into action. All kind of went over my head. Not gonna lie, I don't really know what you're saying, but I get it. I kind of get it. I don't know specifically what you're on about, but I get it. And one of the things that struck out to me again into how intricately written this bloody program is Jamie stands up and he sort of says, what was crazy to me was how much the way he was talking about them needing to play. He was like, it needs to flow, it needs to be flexible. Comes back to episode 1, where they go into the sewers, and it was a whole thing about everyone needs to sort of be connected, and it was about, as he says, the poopy. You got to let it flow. Like it was almost like, and it was another thing of Ted Lasso not of Ted Lasso not spelling out the message. Like this was a really subtle thing for me, where it was like, I think they are trying to connect it to that whole thing of like this group needs to work together. As Ted was getting at last week, they need to sort of be flexible and they need to flow together, and that's how this system's going to work. I just thought that was a really good writing thing, and then in the end, they don't win, but they get a goal that worked and was executed the way they wanted it to. Yeah, and that's realistic and important.
Yeah, and they're not gonna. I mean, stranger things have happened, but I think it would have been very unrealistic for Richmond to be 3-0 down and then to win 4-3. So they scored one. The way they wanted to operate worked. They sort of figured out how to. And what I will say is that I liked, just a little detail, is that I liked that Jamie is the one to sort of explain, like, look, we're doing it wrong. This is how you do it. And that links back to the beginning of the episode, because obviously when Coach Beard is going through the history of total football, he's saying, this, I can't remember his name, but this player played it and coached it, and he coached Pep, and Pep is the head coach of Man City, like in real life. And then obviously Jamie played for City, so of course it makes sense that Jamie is the one to explain how it works to Richmond. I just really liked that little detail.
Yeah, which, by the way, when Beard's like, and then Jamie left City to go on a reality show, I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nice to see sort of a realistic portrayal of them making a step forward without being like, we've won. These things don't happen overnight, and it was great to see that reflected. Trent is almost treating it as a win. And he's like
super excited. Yeah,
he's so excited to the point where I was like, is this mildly out of character, or are we just seeing a really excited Trent? And I think we're just seeing a really excited Trent.
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed seeing Trent being positive, because we usually see Trent being, very journalistic, very reserved, very
inquisitive,
and very stoic almost. And it was so nice to see him like literally buzzing. I loved it.
It's like, for him, his story's finally clicked. Like, he knows where it's going, and he wrote it in, and they can get away with it because obviously a football season is referred to as a season, so we can get away with saying this. But when he's like, this is not just the first time that you've done total football. Total football isn't real. Total football is the Ted Lasso effect. And this is an intricate thing that you've plotted over the last 3 seasons with minor character motifs all coming together to climax here. It's going to work, Ted. It's going to work. Yeah. And I was like, this guy's just sort of saying, like, look how smart we are. We've written 3 seasons of intricate character work, and it's all going to come together over the next 4 episodes. I don't give a fuck. That works for me. I love it. I'm on board with it. Go, Trent.
I can't wait. Can't wait for next week. I'm so excited.
Yeah, very good. I think we got 5 episodes, not 4 left. The ending we sort of touched on earlier. They're all at Sam's restaurant, and it's called Ola, and you sort of you see that Sam's dad's called Ola. I don't think he'd been referred to as Ola before that point, I don't think.
I don't think so.
And so that's why the name now makes sense. And yeah, there's just a real sweet ending. Vinny, an MVP of this episode, may I ask you for?
My MVP is Mr. Jamie Tartt.
Okay.
Just because I think that, I think that even what we didn't touch on quickly a minute, is that he, when everyone swaps positions, he gets told not to swap.
Yes.
Because they're like, oh, we just want you to do what you'd want to do. When in actual fact, Jamie, and even like Danny says it when Jamie's like, look, don't play to me, play through me.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamie steps back and Jamie isn't taking the limelight and Jamie helps the team and everything like that. I just think like, Jamie's done the most for that team this episode, in my opinion.
That's a really good call. I think that's really, that's almost made me kind of want to change mine, but I'm going to stick with it just for the sake of it. I sort of went with Ted because he sort of has his mojo back this episode and he's there trying to make this work. And he's, obviously they wouldn't be on the up if it wasn't for this whole movement for him and the way he's now approaching training with like a bit of vigor and a bit of pep in his step. And the Ted Lasso of season 1 that's really focused on training and not just training, obviously the whole camaraderie aspect, but he does have a football head on at the moment, and that's what I've really missed of Ted. So I'm really loving that he's got his mojo back in that regard.
Oh yeah, no, I'm the same. That's why I'm very excited now going forward, especially now that they've established that total football is working for them. Like they know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Are we going to see Richmond on a redemption? I'm not sure. Are we going to see them on a bit of a win streak? Or just a win? Are we going to see a win? They need
to set up how far into the season they are, because there's been a lot of like time jumps, like in between 4 or 5 when Zava was doing like really well for the team or something. There was that montage where they like went through like 10 games in like a minute, and then you have episodes that are based like across like one day. So it's like I don't know where in the season we're at the moment. I hope there's still quite a bit left. I'd imagine there would be if they're experimenting with a new game plan, but I'd like to see where that's at, so we can maybe start to see like a bit of an aim as to what Richmond is aiming for.
Yeah, and sort of a time frame.
Yeah, that sense of urgency.
What I'd like to see, because I don't think we've not seen it for a few episodes now, is the ranking of the league table.
Yeah, how far have they dropped off since losing Zava?
Because obviously in this episode, May says that they're going to get relegated again. I'd like to see where West Ham are as well, but that's why I think that we're going to have like more of a Nate-centered episode with like a lot of Rupert in coming up. But I just want a little bit more detail, but I'm very excited. I feel like the ball is quite literally rolling now.
Yeah, this was I was talking to a quick plug for the end of the show here. My good friend Connor, who me and him, we run a Doctor Who podcast together every single week, 50% Doctor Who podcast, so you can check that out. I was talking to him the other day about this, and we were sort of saying, like, for a show that's most likely in its final season, we kind of felt like it wasn't really starting to wrap things up. Like there was so much still to do, and it kept adding more new characters and stuff. And then this was the very first episode for me where I've been like, okay, now they're starting to bring things together and put on the brakes and sort of wrap things up. So, and they've got 5 more episodes, I believe, to do it in. So I think they're going to do a good job with it.
Well, I hope so. I'm very excited.
So. That is our show. We will be here for these next 5 episodes, which will be fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and watching, because these shows have been doing pretty well, and it doesn't go unnoticed, and we appreciate it very much.
Yeah, we enjoy doing it, and we're glad that people enjoy listening.
Yeah, hallelujah, as they say. Vinny, thanks once again for joining me. I'm sorry for ruining your day with terrible humor.
Day ruined.
We will see you all next week. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.